Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today I'm playing Chaturanga, an ancient form of chess. In Chaturanga, the bishops are called elephants. They can only move 2 squares diagonally and they can also jump. The queens are called counselors and they can only move 1 square diagonally. The rooks are called chariots, but they're still rooks, and pawns can only move 1 square at a time, so no en passant. In this video, my goal is to win 5 games. Let's get started with game number 1. Alright, for game number 1, we're going to try to crush our opponent's will to play by playing a sort of pseudo London system. Obviously, this isn't a real London system. If anything, we're actually playing to e4, but it's in front of what would be the equivalent of our queen, a little downgrade, a minor downgrade, but we will try to play a sort of London system here. Alright, we get elephant to e6. I'm going to continue to develop my pieces towards the center, and eventually I'm going to have to do a makeshift castle, because in this variant there's no actual castling, so you have to sort of DIY castle, move the king up, chariot over, and then drop the king back down. Arrows as awful as always. We'll play knight to f3, continue developing towards the center. Okay, we get elephant out to h6. I don't think that changes our plans whatsoever. Actually, I had a sort of epiphany about these elephants. These elephants can only move to 8 squares. So let's take this elephant, for example. This elephant started on f8, and it can only move to these squares. So if a piece can only move to 8 squares, I can't imagine it's terribly worthy, right? It would be quite frustrating in an endgame to end up with 3 or 4 of those and be told to find checkmate. It would be very, very frustrating. So I wonder how much this elephant is actually worth. Let me know down in the comments below if it's just a handicap because I really don't understand how to use these pieces, which is totally possible, or if these elephants really are only worth maybe like 2 points or something like that. We get elephant out to c4. I'm going to boot the elephant with pawn to d3. Go ahead and create that pawn structure. I've actually developed this knight incorrectly, I've just realized. Okay, we get elephant back to a6. I'll go ahead and start my makeshift castle, drop my king back to c1. Okay, we get counselor to d7. And nice, it's kind of like we've done a sort of long castle here. I will say that in Chaturanga, the games tend to be a little bit slower. I've noticed that it's not quite as dynamic as some of the other variants that I've done on this series. I'll go ahead and kick the knight out. Okay, knight trade for the elephant. I think that's good for us. At least personally, I feel more comfortable maneuvering and finding tactics with a knight than I ever would with an elephant. For example, this elephant right now can only move to c4 where it will get captured, or it can move to c8. Back to the back rank and kind of get in the way of other pieces. So personally, not the biggest fan of the elephant. Oh, that's right. Pawns can only move 1 at a time. So I'd like to make it to g4. There we go. We do make it to g4. Grabbing a little bit of space, the elephant heads back. And that's another example, right? The elephant goes back, but now what? It can only move back to h6. So as you can see, I won't hate on it anymore, but as you can see, I'm not the biggest fan of this elephant piece. Okay, we get pawn to g5. I'll develop my elephant to d3. And we get a rook lift. Interesting, we get a rook lift before castling, so I'm assuming that I should be looking for some kind of way to create an attack here. Okay, we get knight to b4, we'll boot the knight, maybe we can get it to trade for the elephant. Nice, okay, I'm personally quite happy with that. Next, I'd probably want to play, opponent beats me to the punch, but I was going to say I'd like to play b3 to boot the elephant. I think I can still play that though, right? Because the elephant can't actually do anything about getting deeper into my position. If the elephant goes back, it's almost trapped. Even d5 puts it kind of in a scary situation. So we'll see. Okay, the elephant does in fact go back to e6. What about d5 now? Forces the elephant all the way to home base, which seems quite good for me. And then we'll push e5. If we get this trade, we fork the counselor and the chariot. And I think we're looking quite good in that situation. Okay, chariot moves over to d6. I could take the counselor, but I think it's better for me to take here with check. And then we capture the chariot, right? Because for certain, definitely the chariot is worth 5 points. There's not a shred of doubt in my mind that a chariot is worth 5 points. The counselor, on the other hand, being a queen that has been severely downgraded to only moving 1 square diagonally, I'm not so confident about what that point value might be. Okay, we get a recapture. I have 2 chariots, a counselor, and a good old trusty knight left on the board. Let's play knight to b5 with the idea of taking on c7 and snatching another fork. Okay, the king heads back over, and we'll play h4. I'd like to open up some lines in the position. Cool. Right, because my chariots aren't really worth much if I can't have any open files. Oh, h6, very nice. Defends with the elephant. I will play... I have to admit, it's very tempting here to play g5 with the idea that if my opponent takes, I play the chariot back, and either somebody comes over and defends the elephant, and then we drop this, or nobody can defend the elephant. So let's try g5 on for size. I'm down to 35 seconds, so I need to pick up the pace a little bit. Okay, we get pawn to h5, but I think I can just take that and continue with the same idea. Okay, the counselor moves back, which is quite clever, right? Now if I try to hit the elephant, well, actually still, right? Because where's the elephant going to move? Again, it's that same drawback. It's that same drawback. Oops, I disconnected for a moment. It's that same drawback. Where's the elephant going to move to? It has so few spaces that it can escape to. The king comes and defends it, and now I take this pawn and hit the chariot on the way. Okay, let's see. How else do I continue here? I probably could take the counselor in this position, and I will. I'll take the counselor. This rook seems to be having a hard time getting into the position, and this elephant is now pinned. So now I can give check, pick up the elephant right behind the king, check again. And now, as long as I don't blunder anything, I should be completely winning. I'll probably go in for promotion. I wonder if I can promote to a queen. Probably not. In most of these variants, if you can promote, you have to promote to something that's actually already on the board. Okay, we get the king over, which allows me to pick up the elephant. We'll take back. And as long as I don't stalemate, I should be good. Oh, it automatically promotes to a counselor. Well, that's not really what I wanted, but okay. We'll pick up these pawns. So now I have to, well, I don't have to checkmate with the counselors. Actually, I can just bring up my king, right? Instead of overcomplicating things and trying to find checkmate with these pieces, I'll just bring my king over and get a typical king and rook checkmate. Nice, and we get the resignation. Okay, we win game number 1. I feel quite good about that, and I feel like I've correctly assessed the actual value of the elephant. We'll go ahead and move on to game number 2. All right, game number 2. We get the white pieces again, so no reason not to play the exact same opening. We get the elephant developed right away, sure. Elephant to f4, whoa. Is there something actually missing here? I don't think I'm missing anything, so I'll continue developing as normal. This is kind of like a normal chess, right? If you throw your piece out too early by itself, it's usually not going to get too terribly far. Okay, this time I'll actually play a real London system. I say a real London system, we're in a totally different variant, totally different universe, but we're in the right spirit. Okay, we get normal development. I'll just place my elephant here on e3. And in just a moment, oh, actually, I can't even move my king forwards to do that pseudo castle, right? This elephant actually controls that square, so it's necessary now to boot this elephant so I can continue forward with my plan. Elephant goes back. Is this a fork? No, the knight covers that. Okay, so I'll move my king forward. I'll shuffle my chariot, stick my king in the corner so he doesn't get in trouble. Ah, he's already in trouble. How is this possible? Okay, elephant delivers check. This is making me rethink my assessment of the elephant. I guess I'll just move backwards. I think both of us will end up losing a tempo either way, because now I boot the elephant and then I go back to that square that I started on, right? Although, no, my opponent's actually won a tempo, right? Because now we have this knight newly placed on d4. I will play knight here. No, I was going to play knight here and offer a trade, but that hangs the pawn. Okay, so I'll continue with my normal plan, king to d2, slide the chariot over, king back, and then we'll figure out how to take advantage of the fact that our king is protected and our opponent's isn't. My opponent asks, are you the real one? And I said, yes, because I am. It's quite funny because there is a discrepancy between my names, right? On YouTube, I'm I Want Checkmate. Here I'm I Really Want Checkmate. Because I Want Checkmate was taken. Urgh. But it's okay. Okay, the elephant moves back. I think I can continue with my plan. Chariot over to d1, slide the king back, and we'll work our way towards an actual attack here. Okay, we get pawn to d6, slide the king back, no brainer. Okay, we get pawn to g6. This knight is actually quite frustratingly well placed, so I'm going to play my knight backwards to try to boot it. I couldn't do that with this knight because I'd hang f3, so we'll do it with this one instead. And it's not actually defended by anybody, so it has to make a decision. Maybe c5, make the center a little bit more concrete. Maybe there's ideas of c3 to boot the knight after. Okay, we do get the trade. Sure, I'll take back. And now I'm a little bit more comfortable. I'm a little bit more free to play. I can push on d4, for example, and try to find a little bit of extra space. Okay, we get pawn to c6. I'll move my knight back towards the center. Okay, and we get d5. Definitely fighting back for the center. Question is, do I want to close up the center, or do I want to take on d5 and keep things kind of open? And I'm probably going to take. Reason being, my king is well protected. My opponent's king is not necessarily in the best spot, so there's a chance that I can make something out of that. I'll go ahead and develop my last elephant. Okay, we get pawn to a6, which restricts my elephant from moving to b5. I'll go ahead and develop my counselor to f2, slide the rook, well, the chariot towards the center. Okay, we get the final elephant developed, sure. We're both kind of slowly bringing our pieces to the center, but I don't think either of us have a particularly clear idea of what exactly is supposed to happen next. We're both like on the front lines ready to go, but neither of us has a real, well, I speak for myself mostly, a real concrete idea of where to go next with this. I'll slide my king over just in the spirit of not keeping it on the same file as the chariot. Okay, Counselor comes towards the center. Let's target b6. Target b6 for a sneaky fork. Okay, Rook comes over to b8, protects the pawn, and gets rid of the fork altogether. And now my knight is a little bit awkwardly placed there. Let's bring the knight back. It was more of a trap than anything else, and it didn't work, so right back where you came from, buddy. Okay, we get pawn to b5, probably looking to open an actual line on the queen side rather, which is a little bit scary for me. I'm going to play my elephant to c5, right? It's an outpost now, since there's no pawns that can boot my elephant from that square, so I believe it's quite well placed there and maybe can apply a little bit of pressure with the chariot on that e7 pawn. This is definitely a game that's gone very positional, right? There's a lot of maneuvers, most of the pieces are still on the board, and my opponent is down to 8 seconds. So I'm not sure how much positional calculation we're going to do, or if we're just going to flag, but... Okay, my opponent does flag the game, but honestly, very, very well played, right up until the forfeit, right? I'm not even sure what Black's plan here should have been. I probably would have played, like, king here, bring the chariot over, drop the king back, and then kind of just push everything into the queen side. I'm not in a particularly great place to defend myself, so... Oh, that's so funny. Is that my opponent's arrows? Is that actually... Wait, can he see my arrows? Wait, let's communicate. Let's communicate. Can we write hi? I don't think my opponent got the message. Oh, actually, I wrote it for myself, so my opponent would see it backwards. Anyways, that was a good game. Let's go ahead and move on to game number 3. All right, we're back with game number 3. We get the same opponent, and that's okay. For one game, I guess that's all right. There's not a lot of people playing this variant. Also, you guys will notice that I'm actually going back through the first series that I did. I feel like I'm a little bit stronger in all of those variants. So if you notice the pattern, you can go ahead and play those variants on the days that I'm going to play them, and there's a chance you'll end up in a video. We'll play knight to c6 here. Normal development. I'm not sure that putting your pieces in front of your pawns is necessarily the best play in this variant, right? Since it seems to be that these pieces, especially the elephants, tend to get in the way a lot. So I'm going to try to fight for the center and then stuff my elephants behind the pawns, and then we'll do that sort of pseudo castle. Okay, this elephant move actually prevents the pseudo castle, so we'll boot the elephant. And I might preemptively play this as well to prevent another elephant move to the side. Nice, we'll go ahead and play this. Okay, we get knight to h3, which also doesn't seem to have a future. So we'll play elephant to e6, and we should be totally good now to just play the king forward, chariot over, drop the king back, and looks like we're in a good spot there. Nice, my opponent might be doing something similar. Okay, we do get a check, but it's just in time for me to finish up my castle, and we can actually boot the elephant now again. It's very funny. I feel like these pieces, when they're developed a little bit too early, spend a lot of time getting kicked around by pawns. Okay, so the elephant moves back. I believe I'm free to play d5 now. We'll go ahead and fight for that center. We have this fork coming as well. And since there's no other pieces in the way to stop us, we can sort of just pave straight down the center. Okay, we get elephant to c5. Doesn't seem to have anywhere else to go. So I'll just play this, and it either now moves to the side, or it moves back and walks into the fork. Okay, it does move back, so we'll go ahead and snatch up that fork. I'm still on the side of the fence that will argue that this elephant can't possibly be worth much, much more than a pawn, right? It's definitely not worth 3, in my opinion. I probably wouldn't say it's worth 1 either, but it's pretty darn close. We'll take here first, since my knight is actually unprotected. And after this recapture, I'll go ahead and take that elephant. Okay, we take the elephant. We're definitely up material, but probably not all that much. We'll develop the elephant to d6. And I think we've done a good job of neutralizing my opponent's pieces. It doesn't seem that these pieces have a lot of spaces to go to. Let's play g5, looking to place an elephant on f4. Nice, we get the knight movement back. We'll place that elephant on f4, and it may very well just be kicked back out, but at least I can say I tried. Okay, it does in fact get kicked out. We head right back. That was a very short-lived expedition. I think I'm learning very quickly that these attacks need to be led by the pawns, basically. Because the pawns will always be worth less than the pieces they face, but these elephants seem to get in a lot of trouble and aren't very good for leading these attacks. Let's play f6. We can develop the counselor to f7, maybe slide the rooks over, get a little battery going. It's quite annoying that this elephant is placed on f5, however. Maybe that's their advantage. Maybe the advantage of the elephants is that when they get into an outpost, it's very, very difficult to remove them. Right, because you don't really want to trade a knight for it. The knight feels like it's worth more. But the elephant controls some pretty key squares, and it can still jump. So maybe that's what they're good for. They're good for outposts. Let's go ahead and trade on d4. Oh, Counselor simply moves back. Interesting. I'm going to just bring my chariot towards the center, under the assumption that if the center's opening up, then I'm going to want my chariots looking down those files. I'm not really sure what I'm going to concretely do with them, but I'm assuming that's where they want to be. Okay, we get c3, we'll go ahead and take with check. Okay, Counselor takes back. A little bit scary that these lines are opening up on my king, but remember, this isn't a queen, so it's not like it can dive in and do anything about it. Let's play this. I'm going to play my Counselor to g6. You know what? I'm having another crisis about how much these pieces are actually worth. Can I trade the Counselor for the elephant and have it be a fair trade? I mean, I assume the Counselor is worth a little bit more, but how much more, right? Let's go ahead and take. I mean, that piece was getting annoying anyways. Let's play. Oh, I didn't think about where I was going to put my elephant after. Okay, the elephant has to go back, which means I'm under some sort of stress to remove this. Oh, that's a free knight. That's a free knight. I was going to say I'm under some sort of stress to remove this pawn because the only legal way out for my elephant is e6. So as long as this pawn is here, I have no way out. The rook comes and defends the pawn. I'll go ahead and double my rooks. And in the perfect world, I get just enough tempo to get this pawn out of my hair. We get rook to d2. This seems to be totally fine. If we get g4, I'll try to undermine that pawn structure with h5. If h3, then I'm kind of just out of luck. I'll push h3. Maybe I can play this and get a passed pawn of my own, which would be quite a hindrance to my opponent's position. Okay, we get pawn to b4, possibly looking for some sort of counterplay, but I don't think that stops my idea. Ooh, we get a sacrifice. Chariot takes on d6. I think I'm going to take that back, though. Remember, that's not a queen. It can't actually pick up the knight. In a normal game, that would have been great to look for a draw. We get the Counselor back to d2. I'll take on h3. I've now created my passed pawn. I'm up a decent amount of material. We'll go ahead and pin the Counselor to the king, and I'll just slowly walk my pawn towards the other side. Oh, I've actually just remembered pawns only promote to counselors. Oh, that's kind of frustrating. I've just remembered that pawns only promote to counselors, which I guess is fine. We'll have a counselor on the board. We'll pick up this free counselor on d2. You'll notice the long-lasting effects of having a misplaced elephant, right? This elephant really has no hope left in the tank. This pawn is anchored down by about 1 million pieces, and this elephant just has no escape. It seems our opponent will flag once more, and we do win game number 3. And I feel like we learned a little bit more there. Pawn promotion, probably a little bit overrated, right? It's going to promote to a counselor anyways. Probably not even the best piece on the board. I'd be happier if it promoted to a chariot. And elephants, yes, we already knew they were finicky, but we want to try to land them on outposts, right? And as much as we can, try to avoid getting them stuck in an awkward position, because once they're there, man, that elephant was never going to escape for the rest of the game. I might as well have lost it and put it to the side of the board. Anyways, let's go ahead and move on to game number 4. All right, we're back with game number 4. We get a new opponent, and we get the white pieces, which is excellent. So I'll go ahead and play that London again, that backwards multi-dimensional from another planet London system. And I'm going to develop my knights first, actually. Right, I'm getting a little bit frustrated with these elephants, so I'm going to kind of just leave them in the back rank until I figure out exactly what on earth I'm supposed to do with it. My opponent's doing actually a great job of fighting for the center as well. Knight to f6, super solid. Let's play f3, with the idea of making my center a little bit more concrete. Okay, we get elephant to d6. I'm going to try something new this game, which is kind of like not developing my elephants at all until much later. So I'll develop my knights first. I don't even know what I was going to say there. I'll develop my knights first, and I'm looking for d4 now. Okay, we get knight to c6, which stops the idea of d4. I'll take a moment to play a3 so that the elephant can never jump to b4 and cause me problems. And we get elephant to e6. I'll kind of repeat the idea by playing d3, cover this square from this elephant as well. And if I can make these elephants incapable of moving, other than moving backwards, then I kind of frustrate the position because there's no way to come clean through the center without moving these elephants. We get knight to d4, which I don't believe creates any new threat, so we'll just play elephant to e3. And I'm still looking to make my pseudo-castle. Oh, I've just realized that I haven't covered this square. That's the only elephant move I haven't covered, so I probably want to play g3 here in just a moment. We'll go ahead and take back with the knight. And it's interesting now, because one has to wonder, how is my opponent going to untangle their position? The elephants... Well, this is not an elephant. This elephant really has nowhere to move, which makes this pawn stuck, which makes the queen behind it stuck as well. The knight is a little bit frustrated as well. It's unclear where it's going to move to other than h5, which would just put it on the side of the board, which frustrates this pawn, which frustrates the counselor right behind it. And all of that frustrates the king and the chariots because it's unclear how you're going to manifest a castle from that position. We get h6, I'll take the opportunity to play g3, cover f4. And the last thing I'm going to do is probably play c3, develop my counselor to d2, king to c2, and then I'll sort of make my castle. Okay, we get pawn to g6, we'll move forward with that plan. And I'm curious to see at what point my opponent figures out a way to entangle this position, right? We get pawn to g5, sure, king to c2, slide the chariot over, slide the king back. I might even develop the counselor this way, so it's not obstructing the view of the rooks, or rather the chariots. Okay, g4, we're looking for a kingside pawn break. Oh wow, can I even defend that? So this pawn is undefended. If I take it, welcomes the knight, which is a little bit frustrating for the position. And if I push f4, that's protected twice, but I only have, well, I actually have the knight on it as well. So maybe that's okay. We'll play f4. This might actually be the center break that we needed, right? If we get rid of that e5 pawn, then there's nobody stopping us from hitting all of these pieces. There's actually e5 on the board right now with that fork. Okay, we get g3, which threatens g2, so I have to take first. And it is defended. It's defended by the knight. And right now we're looking at e5. Okay, the elephant moves to g4, threatens the knight on e2. And the knight on e2 is actually completely unprotected, which is kind of crazy. So let's play knight to d4. Just by moving the knight, I kind of eliminate any threats by this elephant, and if anything, the elephant stops the rook from looking at the g3 pawn. So next, I'd like to get e5, get that fork, and then continue that slow march through the center of the board. It's really crazy how perfectly normal chess concepts translate. We get pawn to h5, we'll grab e5 with that nice fork. I'm assuming my opponent wants to save the knight. It has to be worth more. I mean, if you look at this elephant, the two squares it can move to are these two. It can only move backwards. There's no forward momentum for that knight. Or rather, this elephant. Okay, we get elephant to e2, which is just free, so I'll take it, and we still have this fork on the board. That seems like a little bit of a act of desperation to get something going on the board. We'll take the elephant, we're still hitting the knight, center's looking pretty strong. Once this knight moves, I can also pick up h5. Whoa, chariot to g2. Actually does threaten the knight, there's nobody protecting this knight. So, let's play rook to d2 to protect the knight. Okay, we get knight to g4, which hits the elephant. Is anybody protecting the elephant? No, actually nobody's protecting the elephant either. Wow, that's actually quite annoying. Let's play elephant to g5. Nice. I like that square. It reaches nice into the position. It still controls e3. It's hard to remove because it's protected. Oh, and that's a free knight. I can still jump back and capture that knight. We get rook takes on e2, or rather chariot takes e2. I'll just recapture with my own chariot. We're looking at h5. We're looking at a lot of extra material, and my opponent is too low on time to make much of it. We'll play rook to h8. I'm actually happy to set up this little tactic. We'll double the rooks with the idea that I can sacrifice the rook, the king will recapture, chariot down to h8, and I win the chariot behind it. Okay, actually my opponent sees it, moves the king out of the way. I don't think my opponent's actually a bad player at all. I think my opponent is just new to the variant, and because I have a little bit more board vision, it's easier for me to calculate. I'll go ahead and look for that doubling of the rooks, or rather the chariots. I keep calling them rooks because functionally it's a rook. It's in its essence, it works as a rook. But I like to immerse myself, like I said, in the variant, so we'll call it a chariot. The chariot captures on e8, and I guess let's just push some pawns. My opponent has 12 seconds. There's not a lot of time to calculate what to do. Funny enough, at this late stage in the game, I'm still not sure how my elephants come into play. Let's play chariot to e7 to attack the pawns. Okay, we'll go ahead and capture this pawn, and I'm going to create a passed pawn as well. So f5, f6, I'm sure the king will come over. And can I just sacrifice? Let's do it. I mean, why not? YOLO, let's sacrifice the pawn, push f7, and then we actually protect it with e6. This pawn is not free. If my opponent captures the pawn, then I promote. Okay, my opponent's king is stuck here now, so let's bring out our own king. Nice, we'll walk our king all the way to opposition. We'll make a waiting move. And we might even get a pawn checkmate here. My opponent has to move a pawn and then mate. Nice! Okay, that's actually a pretty cool checkmate. I'm quite happy with that game. We get a pawn checkmate after all of that crazy business in the middle game. And with that, we win game number 4. I think my approach this time was a lot more concrete. Moving the pawns first, leaving the elephants behind until I actually figure out where on earth they're supposed to go. And actually in this game, I never did figure out where they were supposed to go. But it seemed to work out for me. So let's go ahead and move on to game number 5. All right, we're back with game number 5. We actually do get the same opponent, but we have the black pieces this time. That's not going to stop me from playing the London system, however. Okay, we get pawn to E, or rather pawn to D3. It's very confusing because I'm used to the E file being where the king is, but we'll play pawn to E6 with the idea of pawn to E5. Oh, that's funny. My opponent just finished watching one of my videos. That's so funny. Okay, we get pawn to E3. I'll continue to march forward, and if my opponent allows it, I'll just centralize both of my pawns. Okay, immediately my opponent cuts off that idea. We get pawn to E4. Let's develop a knight. He says, you're amazing, bro. Dude, you guys are actually the best. I actually have the best fan base. All right, we get knight to C3. Let's play knight to F6. Knight to F3. My opponent seems to be playing very symmetrically. I'm not sure how I'm supposed to break through this position. I'd like at some point to place my elephant on F4, but for that I'd have to get rid of the G-pawn. And I don't know if I'm getting ahead of myself, because in reality I haven't completed development yet. But it would be really nice to get the elephant there. So I'm having this crazy idea of playing H5, H4, H3. Okay, I have to admit, I just said out loud that it was crazy, so I'll play this first, but I'll keep that in my back pocket. H5, elephant to the side, and then maybe I can push and drop the elephant on F4. That would be spectacular. Okay, we get the counselor to D2, sure. Let's play elephant to E6. I still want to castle, right? Especially if I'm going to lead a kingside attack. I'm going to want to play king to D7, chariot over, slide my king back, have everything safe before I start that attack. We get knight to D5, kind of a tricky move. If I take, my opponent takes back, that's a fork, I immediately lose material. So let's not do that. Let's move the king forward. The only way my king can be targeted is by this elephant moving to H3 and then F5, but in that extra tempo, I'd move my chariot over, and then once I'm in check, I can just slide out of it by castling my king. Okay, we get the counselor to E3. Let's move the chariot over, move the king back. I understand now 100% why they made that rule where you can move the pawns twice and you can just castle in one swift motion because, wow, this is the slowest development ever. We do get that pawn break on D4. We'll go ahead and take. I think that's totally fine. It is defended, but my question is who's going to defend E4 at the end of this? Oh, interesting. I can trade a knight for a counselor. I don't think that's actually a good trade for me, but it would simplify the position a little bit. So I am going to take it and then capture the pawn on E4, looking for F2 right behind it, grab this fork. Okay, king comes forward and defends F2, so that fork is out the window right away. Let's move my king to C8. Finally on move 12, after all of this kerfuffle, I'm actually castled, and we get pawn to F3, immediately booting the knight. Okay, let's play knight back. I'm okay with a trade. I'm happy that the king is still in the center, even though we're approaching an endgame, so it's more safe for my opponent than it was before. I'm still happy the king is in the center, because it gives me chances to play for open files with check, and kind of get the king involved. We get knight to F5. I'm not sure if I can even boot the knight from there. Let's play D5? D5 seems fine. There is check, but I just moved my king out of the way, so not a huge issue, I don't believe. Okay, we get elephant to D3. Let's develop our own elephant to D6, and then I can kind of wrap up this development. I can't believe I'm still focused on development. I mean, it feels like we've made so many moves. I can play counselor to D7, open up this file, and try to get some play going on. Okay, elephant to B5 doesn't actually threaten anything. Controls D7, however. Is that a fair trade? Probably not. So I'm going to boot the elephant first. Once that elephant retreats, then I'll move my counselor, then I'll grab the open file, etc. Knight to E7 check. I'll move out of the way. Nice, we'll play my counselor to D7, and I have to keep in mind there's ideas of playing elephant to C4, which is check. So maybe I could play like rook here, hit the knight, get a double check. I'm not really sure that that accomplishes anything, but it gets my pieces active for sure. Okay, elephant to E3. Let's go ahead and boot the knight with the chariot. When this knight retreats, I can actually go ahead and fight for this weakness on G2. Oh, I dropped the pawn outright. Oh, I didn't even notice that pawn was completely hanging. Not to mention it's dropping F6 right behind it. Okay, there's not much I can actually do about that. I'll get my pieces out of the fork. So I'll play counselor to C6, hit the knight. I drop this pawn, and I guess I'll just move my chariot to E7. Sure, as long as my pieces are safe, I guess a pawn here and there is not too bad. Ooh, elephant to C5. Holy moly. Okay, finally, I think this double check actually comes into play. We'll play elephant to C4 with double check, and that might actually be the saving grace for my rook. Or my chariot, rather. We play chariot to E2 with check, and that's the only reason that my chariot survived, right? Because back here, my chariot had nowhere else to move, and it was being targeted. we get the king forward, hitting the elephant on c4, which is more than enough reason for me to just get it out of the way. Oh, and I have 10 seconds left. Oh, I have to pick up the play here quite a bit. Holy moly. Holy moly. Actually, my opponent has 15 as well. This is going to turn into a bullet game. It's going to turn into a game of who can keep their wits about them best under time trouble. We get check. I'll take. Free material. Very nice. And I feel kind of bad for my opponent because this is where one falls on previous heuristics, right? If you're used to a knight moving a certain way, you're going to play it that way, right? This even looks like a knight. That's extra confusing. But it doesn't work like one. So in time trouble, it's going to be very important for me to calculate things manually, basically. We'll play check. King moves forward. I can take with check, not a knight, so it doesn't actually cover that square. Let's go ahead and take this pawn as well. Again, not a knight, doesn't actually cover that square. Piece here covers these squares, doesn't actually create any new problems. We'll take on a2. Chariot to e5, again, doesn't create any new problems. I'll just move my chariot over. Cool, I'll centralize my counselor. And we are playing 3-2, so I get 2 seconds back with every move that I make. We'll play check. Nice, let's start pushing some pawns. I don't love pushing pawns because pawns are really my best way of restricting the movement of these elephants, right? Like right there, dropped free material that I didn't need to drop. But eventually I'd like to promote. So let's keep pushing. Again, still not an elephant, doesn't cover that square. Keep pushing, I think we're good. And I can't actually promote yet. So let's push another pawn. Oh, one at a time, that's right. These pawns only move one square at a time. Holy moly, this is the longest promotion of all time. I can't actually take because I dropped this. So let's move the chariot out of the way and keep pushing. Okay, I've dropped this now. See if my opponent notices. My opponent doesn't notice. I'll move it back. Let's threaten this piece. I'm down to 6 seconds. It's so hard to commentate. And we'll pre-move that promotion. I'm not actually sure how much that promotion is worth, but hopefully it can get us some play. Okay, let's come around and target this pawn, or else it's going to become an issue. Sure, let's defend the chariot and threaten the pawn at the same time. Interesting. Let's play this. And push. Push the pawn. Be free. Be free. We'll take with check. Is there any way to defend this pawn? It does not seem that there is. My opponent might even just walk the king down. Let's see. Okay, we'll push the pawn. And we'll make a waiting move with this. I have something of a sneaky idea. It doesn't work. My opponent plays this instead. Let's play check. Pre-move anything? Oh, this is such a rough time scramble. I didn't think the time scramble was going to last this long. I'm fine with a fair trade. It seems my opponent is as well. And we need to just focus on restricting the movement of this piece, which is going to be very difficult because these are light squared pieces and this is a dark squared piece. So I'm not even sure that that's possible. Let's move this. Try to get this push. And it might come down to whether or not I know how to give checkmate with these three pieces. Oh, my opponent's going to take the risk. Wait, what? White forfeits on bare piece rule? What is that? What is the bare piece rule? Oh my goodness. Okay. I've come to the point where I realize that the page where it shows you the rules is not always comprehensive. Because sometimes they'll give you like a little tiny icon at the bottom, and from that you're supposed to deduce all sorts of different things. But okay, bare piece rule. Apparently if you lose all of your pieces, that's it. It's game over. You'll learn something new every game. Anyways, with that, we do win game number 5. If you guys did enjoy this video, please consider liking and subscribing. Let me know down below if you particularly enjoyed this variant. I personally found it a little bit slow, but if you did, let me know down below. If there's any other variants that you'd like me to try, also let me know. If it gets a bunch of likes, I'll be sure to try it. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one.